A lot of people often label women as materialistic and self-centered, but sadly, I learned firsthand that betrayal can stem from reasons beyond just personal gain. Nora and I got married not long after finishing university. Young, full of joy, we were convinced that nothing could shake the love we shared. We traveled, built our careers, and mutually decided that having kids was something for later. Time passed without us noticing, and before we knew it, we were 30. Suddenly, family planning became a priority. We went to countless doctors and clinics, with Nora taking multiple tests, anxious that a late pregnancy might not work out or that her health could be at risk. But the doctors all assured us there were no health concerns and that it was all in our hands. We followed their advice to the letter, took vitamins, but for 2 years we couldn't conceive. Nora became more and more distressed, and I didn't know how to help. So after consulting with specialists, we decided on IVF, but that didn't work either. After a few attempts, Nora withdrew into herself and stopped talking to me. I suggested adoption, but she exploded in anger. "It's all your fault. I'm healthy, and I want my own child, not someone else's." Then she left for her parents' place in the countryside, saying she needed some time alone. I was at a loss for what to do. I went to a private clinic, took more tests, and worried that maybe I was the problem. But, honestly, would we have considered IVF if there were serious health issues in either of our families? The doctor reassured me. I'll say it again. There's nothing physically wrong. This could just be stress-related. Unfortunately, that happens often. You might want to consider seeing a psychologist with your wife. He also suggested we volunteer with children from orphanages, as it can sometimes help. His words stuck with me. When I got home, I found a great family psychologist, but it turned out I didn't need to go. It was like Nora had transformed. She looked even more beautiful. Her eyes seemed to sparkle. I was taken aback by the sudden change, but I was happy. We were like a young, loving couple again, just as we had been 10 years ago. We went to the movies, took a short trip to the mountains, spent the night together, and for some reason never brought up the subject of children again. 2 months after Nora's strange change in behavior, she greeted me at home with a romantic dinner. "Darling," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement, clutching something in her hands. "A miracle has happened. I'm pregnant." I was overjoyed, practically floating with happiness. I immediately set up appointments with top doctors, and during the pregnancy, I practically carried Nora on my back. Together, we created a nursery, bought furniture, toys, everything we needed, as I eagerly awaited the day I'd become a father. But you might think, this is a feel-good story, right? Unfortunately, that's not how it goes. No, the happy ending I imagined was nowhere to be found. For starters, I began noticing odd things about Nora's behavior. She was yelling into the phone at someone, then texting with a smile, leaving to attend meetings a few times, saying a childhood friend had come to visit. But I was so caught up in the excitement of becoming a dad that I overlooked these strange details. The day of the birth arrived. We had planned for a partner birth, and I wasn't about to miss the moment when my son would enter the world. Imagine my shock when, along with the cry of our newborn, a man burst into the room. "Nora!" he shouted, rushing to my wife. "I can't do this. This is my son, and I want to be his father." I couldn't believe it. She had cheated on me, and for months she'd been lying to my face. "Darling," she cried when she saw the stunned look on my face. "You know I wanted a child, my child. This was the only way. Forgive me." "All right, everyone out of the room," the midwife shouted, her voice sharp. No fighting here. The stranger and I were forced out into the hallway. I slumped against the wall, sinking to the floor. I don't get it, I whispered, feeling numb. What's not to get? The man snapped, his voice crude. You couldn't give Nora a baby, but I could. Now she's mine. The words hit me like a punch. Suddenly, everything clicked. I leaped to my feet and grabbed him by the chest. Who the hell are you? I demanded. He explained he was Nora's classmate, that they'd met years ago at school, and later reconnected when she went back to the village. Old feelings came back, he said, a mocking smile on his face. I was furious, my anger boiling over. I shoved him away and stormed off straight to the doctor. Of course, there was a chance that the child could still be mine. I agreed with the doctor on a DNA test, then went home, unable to settle, waiting for the results. Nora kept calling and texting, but I ignored her. No matter whose child it was, I knew that everything between us was over. A couple of days later, the test results arrived, and they shattered my hopes. The child wasn't mine. That same day, I filed for divorce. Later, Nora came to my apartment to gather her things. At first, she was silent, packing up her things, but then she approached me, her voice soft. I know I've done a terrible thing, she said, her eyes filled with guilt. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but what were you hoping for, Nora? I asked, my voice sharp. How could you think the truth wouldn't come out? She paused, then spoke, her voice shaky. I wasn't thinking about anything at that moment. I was desperate. You know how much I wanted a child. My own child. This was the only way. I had no other choice. And I couldn't understand how I ever loved her. You were my life. I did everything for you. But you chose the easy way out, betrayed everything we had. I don't want you in my life anymore. Leave. And I suggest you sign the divorce papers without making this any harder than it needs to be. She stood there, her lips pressed together, her eyes downcast. So you'll never forgive me? She asked quietly. I don't want to forgive you, I snapped. When she left, I found myself looking out the window for some reason. I watched Nora leave the building, and the man she left me for carefully took her suitcase and opened the car door for her. The divorce was finalized quickly, and I decided to start all over again, leaving everything behind. It was then that it dawned on me. Happiness is fleeting and unpredictable. You never know when everything will collapse.